This is the second bacteria lecture. In this lecture, I am going to talk about the microbiome, and I'm also going to review some illnesses that are caused by bacteria. So your learning objectives are to define the term microbiome, and then I would like you to be able to describe the symptoms in tetanus, tuberculosis, pneumonia, botulism, MRSA, and meningitis. So here's where we will start the presentation. So this slide is showing you the Human Microbiome Project. So basically, microbiome means all of the organisms that live in and on the body. Now, these include bacteria, archaea, I put eukaryotes, primarily fungi, and viruses. So if you were to take all of the bacterial cells that live in and on your body, it's actually 10 times more cells than you have human cells. Now, the other interesting thing about bacteria is they exchange genes between our cells and themselves. So a lot of the bacteria in our body have human genes in their bacterial chromosome. And sometimes we've even found bacterial genes in our human cells, in addition to, of course, to mitochondrial DNA in our human cells, which comes from bacteria. Now, having a healthy microbiome, and you may have heard of this is where the whole industry of probiotics comes from, but having a healthy microbiome is essential to human health. Bacteria in your body produce vitamins. They help you break down your food. For instance, the human body cannot break down plant cell walls. We need bacteria to break down that cellulose. They can even affect our immune system, and they can produce an anti-inflammatory compound. But what is more interesting, to me at least, is that your microbiome has a very significant influence on your personality, social cohesion, and your mental health. So your intestines, your gut, is considered the second brain of the human body. What happens is bacteria can release neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters are those chemicals that help to transmit impulses through your neurons. Now, there are actually neurons in your gut. And so when the bacteria give off neurotransmitters, it activates those neurons in your gut and sends messages to your brain. So we've actually found, we being the scientific community, have found links between your microbiome and things like depression, anxiety, ADHD. Now, here's two studies that I found interesting. So there was a study that had rats that were supplemented with beneficial live bacteria, so like probiotics. And then there were a group of rats where their entire microbiome was killed off through like antibiotics. And what they found is the rats that had the healthy microbiome actually had different social behavior. Now, another study looked at hyenas. They produce a paste from their scent glands, and it contains bacteria in it. And these actually facilitate or enhance social cohesion. And we can see the same situation in humans. Body odor, particularly in your armpits, are actually different chemicals excreted by the bacteria that live there. And these chemicals, you've heard them called pheromones, actually play a major role in attraction between, I would say people of the opposite sex, but actually it's between just people in general. Now, I would like you to watch the video that I've linked here. It's on the gut-brain axis. It's like an 8-minute video, a TEDx video. It's really educational and shows the different studies that have established some of the relationships between the microbiome and mental health. So now I'm going to talk about some illnesses that are caused by bacteria. So you've all probably heard of tetanus. We have to get vaccinations for tetanus, and it's actually caused by a bacterium. And this bacterium produces a toxin that is going to paralyze your muscles. Now, the picture I put on the top here is just a drawing, obviously, because some of the pictures of people with tetanus were pretty graphic. But tetanus affects the brain and the nervous system, and it's usually fatal. Now, you can get this bacteria, like if you cut yourself with a dirty nail or metal, you're supposed to go in and get a tetanus shot, and that is to protect you from a lot of these symptoms. Here we have tuberculosis. It is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it is airborne and very contagious. It affects lungs, and maybe you've known somebody who had tuberculosis, or maybe you've seen depictions in movies or shows. People usually cough up blood. They have fever, night sweats, a persistent cough, and they actually can become quite ill. People used to die from tuberculosis, and I believe they still do in areas with not as advanced medical care. Now, we had, excuse me, we had almost eradicated tuberculosis in this country, but now with the anti-vaccine movement, we're seeing it come back at higher numbers. Here we have pneumonia. Now, pneumonia can be caused by a virus, a fungus, or a bacteria. So Klebsiella pneumoniae causes bacterial pneumonia. Now, a virus, obviously, we're still experiencing COVID-19 to a certain extent, but COVID-19 causes viral pneumonia. And it's my understanding that that is what a lot of people were dying from, was a severe pneumonia that set in after you contracted the virus. Now, what happens with pneumonia is the alveoli, which are small sacs in the lungs, they fill up with pus and fluid, and it makes it very hard to breathe and get the oxygen that your body needs. Remember, you breathe in oxygen, it goes into your bloodstream through your lungs, and you breathe out carbon dioxide. Here we have botulism. Now, this is a foodborne illness, Clostridium botulinum. But what happens is the bacteria produces a toxin that paralyzes muscles, and it is often fatal. However, we have started using, or we've been using it for a very long time, this bacterium to make Botox, which people inject in their face to paralyze the muscles under your skin so that you don't have wrinkles. And that's what gives people like the very smooth skin appearance. And recently we started using Botox to treat migraines. So people who get like numerous migraines a week their health insurance will cover these Botox shots, but it's like 100 shots that you get all over your scalp to paralyze the muscles like under the skin on your that's covering your skull so that you don't get migraines. I've heard it's actually very effective. Now, MRSA is caused by Staphylococcus aureus. Now, we all have this type of bacteria on our skin, staph. However, there are strains of Staphylococcus that cause infection. MRSA stands for methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So it's a strain of staph that causes severe skin infections, and it can also cause a blood infection. And when we say methicillin resistant, that means it is resistant to almost all antibiotics. The last time I read about MRSA, there was only one antibiotic that is produced, vancomycin, that will treat MRSA. Now, it can be fatal. And it used to be that people only got MRSA in hospitals after, say, surgery. But now we are seeing it spread throughout the community in places like gyms or where there's like communal showering, things like that, you will see MRSA spread. So it is considered a very serious health threat. So it's the CDC monitors MRSA infections, and that's one of the things that they are warning us against as being a pending human health crisis. Of course, now it's been replaced by COVID-19, but finally, we have meningitis. Now, there's different types of bacteria that can cause meningitis: Listeria, Streptococcus, which I believe it's a Streptococcus that also causes strep throat. Obviously, Streptococcus causes pneumonia, things like that. So these bacteria are airborne, and they can affect your brain and spinal cord. So if you look in my picture here, the meninges is a layer of tissue surrounding your brain, and it will become inflamed. Now, for those of you that have kids, you are always warned to take your child into the hospital if they have a stiff neck and a fever. That is because it's always a possibility that they have contracted meningitis, and it can be fatal in children. So those are the diseases that you need to know about. You need to know the basic symptoms, the ones that are on my slides. And then you also need to be able to define the term microbiome. Remember, that refers to microorganisms. Think microbiome, microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, things that live in and on your body. And most of these are necessary for human health.